days are short and the nights are long. A room slowly fills with song. All I need is one reminder. Parkway blue blinded. Well, I begged and cheated and I borrowed for my life upon the road. I'm still looking for some gold at the end of my rainbow. Yes, and someday I will find her on a parkway blue blinder. On a parkway blue blinder. Someday I will find her. Yes, and someday I will find her on a parkway blue blinder. On a parkway blue blinder. On a parkway. On the parkway, on an autumn day. Yes, and leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade. On the parkway, on an autumn day. Yes, and leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade.
And welcome everybody to today's edition of the Scenic City Sports Podcast, brought to you by the fine folks at Gary Thacker Insurance and all of our all-star sponsors, Rusty, Scott, and Rob, joining you guys on this Thursday afternoon. A lot of sports news to talk about, but the first thing I had in line for us, because I know this is what we'll wind up talking about the most, and that is just heard this morning, and this is something I think they have bantered about for the last week or so. They've been bantering this about for a while because they realize how much more money can be made. But there is a proposed new format for the college football playoffs, and a proposed new format for the college basketball playoffs. So start with basketball, and then we'll get into football. Basketball is proposed for it to potentially go to a field as large as 72 or even a little larger. No change to the 64-team tournament, would just be adding more play-in games. So teams that would, realistically, what you would think is that would give those teams that are on the bubble a chance to play themselves into the tournament, the ones that really have a deserving shot at it, which I have really no problem with that at all, because the tournament itself stays in its entirety at 64 teams, so forth and so on. That doesn't bother me at all. The football one is what they're calling a 5-11 to get to a 16-team field. You would have the 5 major conference championships and then 11 at-large bids that would be determined by a college football committee. So basically that championship committee that does things now, they would expand that out to decide 11 more teams for a total of 16 teams in the competition.
Who's the 5th conference champion? Who's the 5th power conference champion?
I mean, I'm assuming it's the traditional 5, but I know where you're getting at, that some of those conferences, I mean, really...
Because no offense to the new Pac-12,
yeah,
but Texas State...
Yeah. Well, the SEC and the Big Ten...
San Diego, I mean, that's not, in my opinion, a power conference.
Well, the SEC and the Big Ten were not happy with all of it. Their proposal was that their 2 conferences should be able to make up half the field, and then they should get 4 each. But I mean, you could make a hell of a case. I mean, if you took the top 4 teams in those 2 conferences, I mean, that's going to get you your Alabamas, your Oregons, your Georgias.
It's not that you're not going to get 8 good teams doing that.
No.
I
get it.
I do think
it's extremely one-sided.
I think they got away from crowning the 5 champions as 1 seed, Scott, because we saw how that was wrong last year. You got to get away from giving a championship to a very weak conference a pass through this tournament in that respect. And so I think I've heard them say they're not going to do that. But yeah, the SEC and the Big Ten won't their way in that respect. But I don't think it's fair either to just turn around and say, okay, you 2 both are granted 4.
No,
I don't think that's fair either.
It's
the
not.
Season being played out.
It's not. And what should happen is the top 16 teams should go. I don't care if you won your conference or not. Because some conferences are stronger than the others. I don't want to give a pass to, for instance, let's say an ACC champion who was ranked 14th at the end of the year.
A conference that's
just
really
give me, figure out a committee, figure out a computer system, whatever you have to do. Tell me who the best 16 teams in the country are, seed them, and let's go, and be done with it.
Well, we all knew when it grew from 4 to 12 that there's always going to be 13, 14, 15 arguing that they got left out.
And when this proposal goes through, people will be arguing that 17, 18, 19, 20 should
they
be
deserve the shot.
Okay, so
that's true.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to give you guys, this is, as the season ended last year, this was the top 25. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Georgia, Arizona State, Boise State, Tennessee, Indiana, Ole Miss, SMU, BYU, Clemson, Iowa State, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
On the outside looking in, Alabama, Miami, South Carolina, Syracuse, Army, Missouri, UNLV, Memphis, Colorado.
Well, you hit on 3 or 4 big ones there that could naturally argue we're better than such and such. But there again, I realize those 2 conferences are the power conferences, but just to grant them 4 straight on each side, when you do that, the next time this comes up, well, you need to grant us 6. And then before you know it, Scott,
we need. It's just going to be these 2 conferences.
We're going to leave the rest of them out of this.
We know where this is headed, so let's just go ahead and get there now. The SEC and the Big Ten are eventually going to secede from the NCAA, and they're going to form their own little conference, their own little league, and they're going to play for that national championship.
You've been preaching that for the last few years.
But it may, and I thought it was going to be the Power 4 conference. It may just be those 2, because they're going to get mad. They didn't get their way. They didn't get 5 teams in the playoffs, or they didn't get 6 teams in the playoffs, and they're eventually going to say, "What are we still doing with this group?"
And
they're going to leave.
What 6 teams logistically would be left out of that? If they did that, you would be leaving somebody out that's capable of being in that club.
Right now you got what, 16 teams?
Whether it be a Clemson or
16
Miami
teams in the Big, or how many teams are in the Big Ten now?
Let's see.
That's stupid. I know there's 14 in the SEC.
I think there's more there.
Is there 20? There's not 20, is there? Is it just 16?
They went out there and pretty much robbed the West Coast.
Let's see here. 18 members and 2 affiliate institutions. It is.
So they got 18.
Yep. We have Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, UCLA, USC, Washington, and Wisconsin.
I think that's 20.
Pretty big schools and all that.
So you've
affiliate meaning they're not going to play everything, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So that's 34 teams. That's half. That's roughly half of the Power 4 conferences right now, not counting the Pac-12.
Yeah, but there again, I mean, there are some schools, a couple in the ACC maybe, and a spread across that on a given year, they can be solid enough to be worthy of being in that 16. And so if you just start trying to run them all off, I mean.
Well, I don't know if they're going to run anybody off. What I think will eventually happen, like I said, those two conferences may break away, form their own, and when that goes, and then everybody sees that the TV rights are going to be X number of billions of dollars because that's where all the power conferences are, then's when you're going to see Clemson and Florida State and your Miamis and some of the other schools are going to say, wait a minute, we went in on this too, and they're eventually going to leave whatever conference they're in, and they're going to join the Big 12.
And I realize Florida
SEC.
State has taken on the chin the last few years, but that program will somehow, it may take another coach, but that program will somehow find its way
and
back
you could
to
end up with two conferences, and they may even have conferences anymore, where you could have like the SECs like the NFC and the Big 12, Big 10s like the ACC. You could have 24 teams in each one.
Yeah, but
and then let the other ones do what they want.
Okay, so again, I'll play the what if. I'll be the what if guy.
Is it a good look to crown two different type of national champions?
Well, I mean, they actually crown
big leagues and one.
What do they crown?
Else?
4, 3. They got because they have the Division I, Division I AA, 2, 1 AAA.
I mean, look at the state of Tennessee and Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, just GHSA we're crowning 8 state champions right now. If you add all the other private schools and whatnot, there's like 16, 17.
What I would throw in with the turd I'd throw into the punch bowl would be this. We as sports guys are looking at this from a traditional standpoint of these are the teams that have always been traditionally strong in the past era that we have grown up with, of tradition and things done a certain way, so forth and so on. What we have to consider is that we are moving forward in an NIL version of collegiate football, and by a lot of those teams going into those two super conferences, there may be some Midwest and West Coast and Southwest vendors and companies out there that have put money into some of those teams because that team was the primary team in the old Pac-12 or in the old Southwest Conference or whatever, to where that company looks at it and goes, well, they left to go play in a conference out east. We're going to put our money in, whatever university over here. We're going to give them a little more than we normally would have. We've always given them a little bit. We're going to make sure we give them more because they've stayed loyal to the they've come over here, they've bailed the conference out. This is who we've always done our business with. You may see I really feel like college football right now has the potential to be like the NBA draft lottery. All those balls are in the air moving at the same time, and we really don't know 5 to 7 years from now where it's all going to shake out. I mean, we know what we know as far as traditional college powers, but there's a lot of money out there all around this country that it might be one of those things that just completely revolutionizes the whole thing.
And then you're also talking about you're bringing a new element now. The schools are going to be paying the players or the athletes, but they've got to pay everybody. And I still want to see how that's going to work out because the minute quarterback A gets 6 figures a year and women's soccer player goalie gets $4,000 a year, there's going to be lawsuits.
Yeah.
Just go ahead, mark it down. There's going to be lawsuits, but I just wonder how many of these schools are going to be able to afford to pay these athletes and how many are going to have to start dropping sports. We've already seen it starting. And some of these teams, even in the SEC, even in the Big Ten, you may see some of these schools all of a sudden start having to drop some sports, and they may lose some members.
You are not going to see any Division I upper level schools are not going to be dropping sports. If they do, it's going to be a pitiful, poor, pitiful me BS story, because the amount of money that goes through those schools in a given year takes sports completely away from it. That just as a father of a current college student with another one on the way, trust me, you should look at some of the tuitions of some of these schools
and then
tell me how they're going to be losing money in paying these players and stuff when they're making, it goes back to that whole that whole bullcrap story that we heard years ago about the student athlete. And I've used this example 5,000 times, but the amount of money that was made off of Michigan gear while the Fab Five was there is obscene.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of money that was made off Johnny Manziel without ever him making a penny of it. I mean, for God's sakes, Adidas had T-shirts that said football on the back of them, like a jersey, because they called him Johnny Football. Nobody is not getting theirs when it comes to that corporate system. I promise. Now, the Division II and Division III schools, they may see a big difference, but those Division I schools, shoot.
Well, we all know that there's trouble lurking when the Division I schools find a way or are forced to cease paying and playing those Division II teams and bringing them in.
Yeah.
So that's when they're going to suffer the consequences of those big paychecks.
And they're going to stop. The big schools are going to stop playing the small schools, because if they were to lose, if they don't look good, then all of a sudden they don't have those quality wins on their resume, and they don't get that little bump, and they don't make the playoffs.
Well, back when Saban was coaching, he made the statement, "I'm all for us dropping that week of where we're paying it." He says, "But I can't do it, and the rest of you not do it."
I thought that there was a site at one time I had seen
and I know we've talked about
that
this
talked about. Oh, I'm sorry.
We talked about this before, but Deion Sanders come out talking, and he said this. He says, "Unless we get some kind of level playing field of a salary cap, you're always going to see the schools that were capable of paying the most in the same places."
Yeah.
And he's right about some of that.
You're just turning college football into professional football.
Well, and again, I don't want to say the Dodgers and the Yankees are the greatest example of that, because you still got to go play the game. But those are the teams that are willing to spend a whole lot of money to make sure we get to a World Series.
Oh, yeah.
And these colleges that are willing to do that. Now, he said, now occasionally you're going to find a dark horse that works their way into that, but that's just occasional. He said it's going to be the same exact schools that have the money to pay these student athletes more money than everybody else. That's who you're going to see in the same spots every year.
Well,
Makes sense, right?
It does
And
make
my
sense.
question is, too, once they start paying these players, the schools start paying these athletes, are they going to try to make it equal across the board? Or are they going to pump the money into the sports that are actually making money? Because you look at most college campuses.
Good point, but it's probably the latter of what you just said.
Most college campuses, football makes money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it makes money for the entire athletic
It runs
department.
the whole show.
Yeah, I was
A
gonna say
few
football,
less
basketball.
make it for basketball. Baseball, there's a couple. After that, every other sport just about that a major college has, or a minor college has,
Could go in the hole.
loses money.
Well, yeah, because they practically give tickets away just to get people to come out and watch.
And it was
I
like,
mean,
are we going to keep pumping $500,000 a year into this program when we could use that $500,000 for the football program?
I
or the
can't
basketball
use
program?
this exact numbers, but I do remember seeing this the year at LSU, and Joe Burrow won the national championship, one of the greatest teams that supposedly was ever assembled. It talked about how much money the football program brought in, and then it had it broke down with every sport where that money had to go to support the rest of those programs that weren't getting out of the red. And before you know it, really, they made a lot of money, but they kept the rest of the school playing its sports.
And I just found this, and this is kind of what I was looking for. This was the top schools in college football revenue in 2023, so about 2 seasons ago. Texas was at the top, $182 million, and then you drop down to 50, and it was Mississippi State at only 41.
This is in football.
This is football.
Yeah.
41 million sounds like a lot.
But you see what the others
It's
got.
not these days. And when you're Mississippi State at 41 million, and you're looking up at, Georgia 152, Tennessee 134,
That's why
Alabama
that's why they're
129.
towards the bottom of the conference too.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of.
It's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care who you hire as a coach to come back over there. He might make things a game or two better here or there, but if he ain't got the money to buy these athletes like the bigger prominent programs do, then
like I said,
you gonna run him off.
I'm just concerned that we're going to end up losing a bunch of smaller, non-revenue producing sports.
Yeah.
Now his point does make sense, Rusty. If they're going to have to put as much into football as they may have to stay up with the Joneses, then something has to give. And
football is your revenue-producing sport.
What is that sport that gives? And you know, Mississippi State's a great example.
Yeah.
They're not going to compete in that conference with that little bit of revenue coming in. Now they got some other sports that they can possibly get away with.
Yeah,
but,
they could.
But do we have to get rid of a wrestling program or a volleyball program or something that's
no?
Your
Your chopping block is your chopping block would begin with like your. And I'm gonna get hate for saying stuff like this.
Your Olympic sports.
Yeah, your field hockey, your handball,
those
you know,
things.
I mean, there are like you're never gonna take the swim program away from a school like the University of Florida, but you might take the swim program away from a Division II school that struggles to even fill out a team.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, but yeah, Scott's exactly right. Your Olympic sports, you know, your gentleman sports, so to speak.
FCS programs are going to end up suffering. Division II programs are going to end up suffering. And I mean, they have basically just become feeder systems and farm schools for the bigger schools.
And I don't remember if you were here and we had this discussion before you left. Maybe we did, but of all the monies that can be paid out to any individual athlete, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. It is almost without argument. If you've got $1 million and you're buying the best women's softball pitcher in the country, she's worth it.
Yeah.
Because it's even more so than boys baseball, because she's going to stand out there 3 or 4 times every week.
Yes.
And she's going to win you ball games.
You're getting more value for your dollar.
There's the home run.
Yeah, you're getting the
if
value
you're giving
with
it
her.
to the right person.
Yeah. Well, it worries me in the sense of, and we've been talking about football. We'll stick with football. You know, when the last couple of years you've had a lot of kids who didn't go on and play in bowl games because, you know, well, we didn't have anything to play for. You know, I don't want to get hurt. You know, I could wind up with a career-ending injury in this bowl game.
The whole school of Marshall backed out of their bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you had
they didn't have enough players on the roster.
Right.
Everybody didn't transfer.
But you had that type of scenario.
Oh, fix that transfer date too, and then maybe they'll stick around.
How do you not have it? I mean, I'll tell you who doesn't like this if you stop and think about it. Who doesn't like this is the NFL. Because let's take somebody like I'm going to take Derrick Henry just as an example. Say Derrick Henry's playing at the University of Alabama and he's making, you know, as good as Henry was in college, he's probably making $3.5-4 million a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say during that 3.5-4 years or 2.5-3 year span he's at Alabama, he has 2 or 3 major knee injuries. And they do everything they can to get him back out on the field. Why? Not because they're worried about whether or not he's healthy, but they're wanting to get the majority of their $3 million out of their $3 million.
Oh, yeah.
So then Derrick Henry comes along, and while 10 years ago he would have been a top 3 draft choice because of how boss of a running back that he was, now all of a sudden he's a 74 Dodge Dart with 350,000 miles and 2 bald tires in the back. You're not getting what you once were. And for the NFL, all of a sudden now we take the premier product in all of professional sports, and all of a sudden we're lowering that quality level down a little bit because we're getting kids that should have been amazing athletes when we got them. But because of the amount of money they were making in college and the keen thing to get them back on the field, we're not getting what we once got.
No, they're sticking around because they're probably going to make more in NIL money than they are their rookie salary in some cases. And some of these kids, you know, are sticking around now in college for an extra year or so because, like, hey, we may not get drafted. So might as well just try to play another year and get what we can.
And then a lot of those franchises, like I said, they look at a guy and they go, well, that dude's got there's a lot of tread on the, ain't much tread left on them tires.
Yeah.
Saban made this statement, and I thought it was accurate. I thought it was fair. Here you got a junior offensive lineman. He's being told, hey, you're going to go in the first round. You need to hop in there. He hops in there. He don't go in the first round. He don't go anywhere near what he was promised or told. Mm-hmm. And Saban said that's wrong for that kid because he got fed bad information so that he could be part of this this professional career. And if that's not what is good for them, why can't they come back to college and finish out?
That's
wrong.
Yes.
So, and maybe they don't get drafted at all, Scott. Maybe the young man went and thinking, well, I'm going to go in the third or fourth round. I've been promised it, and they don't go at all.
Well, then, but that's why college and NFL, everybody's going to have to work together on this, because right now the way the transfer portal windows are, that if they did do a system like that, and the kid goes through the draft process, he doesn't get drafted where he thinks he should, he wants to come back to school, well, guess what? The draft window's already closed. Mm-hmm. Now everybody's already spent all their NIL money. They've already divvied up the money.
They can maneuver some of that
They
around.
get their rosters put together, and now you've got a kid who's a pretty good player, but where's he going to go?
Well, Saban's making a great point. Here's a guard that's starting for me. Now he's got nothing to do. Why shouldn't he be able to come back?
Yeah.
And I thought he was accurate about that.
Yeah.
And I thought he was not only thinking not just selfish for the coach. That's in the best interest of that ball player.
Oh yeah,
too.
And it is. But the problem is these schools don't have time to wait and see if you get drafted or if you're coming back. They're rebuilding their rosters every single year now. It's not we're going to. Yeah,
it's the one and done mentality.
That's all it is now, because we're not signing kids anymore.
He wasn't my boy until he was my boy, but.
Well, you sign a kid now and you think you're going to get him for 3-4 years.
Yeah.
No, you sign a kid now, you'll get him for 1.
But you know what, man?
And then you got to re-recruit him.
That goes back to the same sad dose of reality that sports talking heads have been trying to get through the head of young athletes for going on 35 years now. Mm-hmm. You are not signing a full 4-year ride to school.
No.
I told that to somebody yesterday.
You are signing a year-to-year deal.
1 year renewable.
Mm-hmm. And if you produce, absolutely they're going to bring you back that next year. But if you don't, and there's somebody at your same position that's better that they can get cheaper, they're going to do that.
And I was telling this story to somebody the other day that was sharing with me that his kid was at the University of Duke playing football. And do you remember the young man down at Ringo several years ago, Scott? Big kid, defensive tackle, also pitched for the baseball team. Big boy. Got a scholarship to play football at Duke. Tore his knee up. Had to drop playing football, and Duke honored his scholarship all the way through. And I thought, that's big, but that's not what the average one would
that's
do.
going to say that's not common.
Defensive tackle
at Ringo?
Ringo probably back about 2012-ish maybe. Good-looking kid. About 6'3" or better. Probably 280 pounds or better. Big boy.
I'm drawing a blank.
Well, he played for Robert Akins. I thought that was unique and a great story. Not that he got his knee tore up, but it was a great story that the school continued. Cutcliffe was the coach at Duke then. That they honored that and let that play out, because that's not what everybody would have done.
No, there's a lot of schools that wouldn't have done that. They'd have cut you faster than your head will spin.
Can't remember the young man's name, but
Zach Morris.
Zach Morris. There we go.
Bayside
now
High.
you know who we're talking about, don't you?
Zach Morris of Bayside High?
Well, when you said Duke, the first name, Marcus Jones, was the first one that popped in my head.
Yeah, he signed with Duke too.
Yeah.
Good football player. I really thought he had a future.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I
knee
apologize. I had forgot about Zach. That was before I started taking over Catoosa.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, he was 6 AAA Defensive Player of the Year, first team All State, sidelined for 2015 due to a torn ACL.
But after he was done with football, I don't know. I guess he made the decision himself. But they honored it all the way out, and I just thought that was tremendous that they did that with him, because that's not what most of them would do.
Well, it's we've already said this once, and I'm gonna say it again, but I really do think that the way this money situation is going to be set up, I think it'll take 10 to 12 years before we really start to see the decline.
Do you agree that there should be a cap?
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
I mean that it shouldn't be the rich. The rich gets to do this, and the rest of them get to do that.
There's got to be rules to it, or otherwise you're going to be the
judge
1960s
everybody.
Boston Celtics, and you get every player that you want. I mean, that's
The only way this works is if we end up with a salary cap, and if we end up with a college football player or college athlete
draft
player association.
Well, you're going to wind up with you're
because they're going to have to negotiate this with a collective bargaining agreement, or it's not going to work.
And let me ask you this: some of those bigger schools I'm talking about, we don't have to sit here and list them. They have some very, very wealthy people standing around that's able to subsidize money. So that needs to be resolved too. It doesn't need to be everybody pays $25 million, and by the way, University of Texas got somebody else throwing in another.
And
we'll
some
be
of
right
these,
back to where we were 20 years ago with those $500 handshakes, and all of a sudden somebody's mama's bills all of a sudden got paid.
Well, that's always the hard to police.
Yes,
the New Jersey walk-on program at Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean you're never going to. The idea behind this is you're trying to get the illegality out of collegiate sports. All the stuff like that. It ain't gonna happen. It's never going to happen. There's always going to be people out there that are willing to skirt the rules and push it just a little bit.
And if they end up negotiating collectively and bargaining collectively, some of these boosters aren't going to be happy, because some of that money is probably going to go to a bunch of different schools, not just the ones they want it to go to. And like you said, we're going to be right back to where.
Well,
and I think we're there now. I mean, the whole SMU thing about buying people cars and stuff like that. Now it's all legal.
How pissed off are all those guys?
Oh. Well, if we took 12 that's there now, and we certainly reached it out to 16, we could still do the same thing. We could start naming several schools that you could count on being there. Ohio State wins the national championship last year. Oh, by the way, they're the ones that spent the most money.
Yeah.
Texas supposedly is in that catbird seat this year. They spent the most money. Are they going to win national championship? They'll be right there. Yeah. It'll be a player or two that keeps them out of winning it.
You're never going to see a potential Cinderella in football like you have almost seen in basketball. I mean, like Butler almost winning a few years ago, and George Mason making the Final Four. That's never going to happen. Never going to happen in football.
You wait until the product on the field for the NFL starts to deteriorate. And when that starts to happen, all hell will break loose. Because those 32 franchises collectively together yield a pretty large stick.
Mm-hmm.
And if it becomes something that causes a detriment to the NFL, it's going to get ugly.
Who's the wealthiest NFL owner? Is it the Seahawks?
Seahawks guy's pretty wealthy.
I think it's either him or. So let's just say there wasn't.
Jerry's pretty wealthy.
There's no cap, and yet, so they can spend more than anybody else. Then they would be sitting near the top.
I thought there's a salary cap in football.
There is a salary.
Think about a place like
non-baseball.
Think about a place like Oklahoma State, though. If T. Boone Pickens was still alive, and this comes down, and they look at the old man and said, "Hey, buddy, you can write a check for whatever you want." How many years is it till Oklahoma State wins the national championship? Because I promise you that old dude would have opened his wallet up for whatever he needed. Well,
I think their success that they did have was a lot thanks to him too.
I mean, you get it gets into these really murky areas because now it makes you wonder how many billionaires out there in the professional world look at this level of college sports, and they're basically donating this money to this school to be used for these salaries. How many of these dudes are going to go, you mean I could get out of paying taxes on $2 billion next year? I'm going to make 10 for the year and I'm going to donate 2? Hell yeah, sign me up.
You're probably going to end up seeing more billionaires get involved in college sports because there's only 32 ownerships available in the NFL. And, these guys, hey, this one guy, he's been wanting to buy a franchise for years and he can't get in the club.
So
we'll just hook up with this college and we'll basically own that one.
What was the thing I saw the other day? It said Elon Musk could spend $1 million a day for 1,146 years and still have money. Now, you take a guy like that might be trying to get a little bit of a tax break. He looks at the levels of college football and goes, how many Division I teams are there? 130-something, 140-something? Let's just round it off. Say, there's 145 college football, Division I college football teams. I think I'm going to give $500,000 to all 145. Or I'm going to give $500 million to all 145. I'm going to donate $70 billion of my $300 and whatever billion dollar fortune I have, and I'm going to write that off.
Yeah.
I mean, people can snarl their nose and they can clutch their pearls all they want to, but don't think that there aren't already people out there right now that have that kind of money. People like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and people like that have unlimited funds.
Well, and then the corporations will start getting involved, and I know everybody was poking fun at Tennessee when they sold the sponsorship to Pilot, for the field and stuff like that. But I'm like, dude, that was the smartest thing you do. Now LSU's talking about putting advertising jerseys on their patches on their jersey. Speaking of ownership, the one NFL franchise that isn't owned by a single person,
which would be
the Green Bay Packers.
God, that stadium is incredible.
I bet it was.
Tell me what.
Oh
tell me what was
That's
the
good
most,
walking into history, isn't it?
besides history. What was something that really impressed you about that stadium? He went to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I was at
Lambeau Stadium
3 days ago.
What was something that you surprised the heck out of you, impressed you?
Well, first of all, you walk in, and I expected there to be a stadium, right? You go to most NFL stadiums, you walk outside, you walk around the stadium and whatnot, and then you go into the stadium. That ain't the way at Lambeau. There's an atrium. And not just a place where thousands and thousands and thousands of people can hang in there. They've got a Super Bowl Vince Lombardi statue, a replica of the Super Bowl trophy that's like 7 stories tall sitting in their lobby.
Wow.
They've got elevators and escalators, and you walk in, you're actually indoors. And, I could not get over just the sheer size of it, and apparently they built all that for $295 million back in the day.
Well, and again, they play plenty of ball games in frigid weather up there.
Yeah,
and
that's part of it.
They built something for the fans to have some kind of relief from that if they don't want to stay out there.
And it's got the most, or the second most permanent seating in the league. And the reason they built that atrium they were talking about, they said, for years, they said, obviously, Green Bay is the smallest market in the NFL. And they were almost at the bottom in revenue. And they came in and said, no, we got to fix that. And so they did the atrium, and now they're doing the tours and doing all the other stuff. Now they're like middle of the pack in the NFL, considering the population of Green Bay is like 109,000 people.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Do they sell tickets in the form of a sellout plus atrium tickets as well? So meaning you're seeing whatever's out there.
So basically their atrium is a lot like the Battery in Atlanta.
Yeah, but you can't see the game.
You can't see the game.
No, you've got to
easy
actually
fix for them.
Just put TVs up
massive
everywhere.
TVs up.
And there are TVs, out there where you could see.
It's like
they got TVs in the elevators.
So it's like the Battery. You go down there and hang out in the atrium, get a beer,
and
walk
maybe
around
they
watching
do.
it on TV.
Maybe they do. I know the waiting list for season tickets is like 50 years long.
I was going to say,
right now.
it's a long time. It's like getting tickets to Rupp.
I mean, it was just it's incredible. Highly recommend if you're ever up. Take the Legacy tour because we got to go. Only thing we didn't
So
get to
it's an
see.
old stadium. We know that.
Yeah, 1957.
but
I
you're
think it's
saying-
the second oldest stadium in the league behind Soldier
But a
Field.
lot of modernization has taken place around it.
A bunch of modernization has taken place. They were redoing the visitors' locker room, which is the only reason we get to go in there. The home locker room is open to players 24/7. So for privacy reasons, we weren't allowed to go in there. But we got to go to the press box. We got to go on the outside of the field. You know, we couldn't actually get on the field. They were aerating the field. But we saw just about everything else. All the stadium seats and the sky
I
boxes.
think they got real grass there, real turf there.
They
it's real grass.
have real grass, but it's also intertwined with some artificial stuff that you can't see it, but it protects that grass a little bit more.
For when it's really, really cold.
Yeah, and then they kill it all off at the end of the year. They reseed everything. They said, the tour guide told us, he said, you come over back here in like April or whatever, and it still looks green, but it's all the
What's in the circumference, the few blocks around the stadium? Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it nothing?
There are some residential houses across the street. Then on one side there's the practice facilities. They've got 2 or 3 fields out there, and then on one side is a popular tavern restaurant called Kroll's West, which is supposed to reopen again today. They had to do some renovations, but a little bit farther down, maybe a couple blocks, is what they call Titletown. And it's got a whole entertainment district, and there's hotels, there's a hospital. They said that some of the best feet and ankle specialists in the country work there and do surgeries and treatment. And they said a bunch of players, even though it's supposed to be privacy laws, but they'll post, they said Patrick Mahomes had worked on there, said all of them will go out there and take selfies with Lambeau Field in the background. But on one side, there's residential houses, and it looks just like.
Well, I've always been told it was just kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
it's not connected to
the town part. How far away are we talking?
Okay, so Green Bay is actually kind of split. The downtown area, there's a river or maybe the bay or whatever, and there's a bridge that you kind of have to cross, but you can go around it.
Mm-hmm.
We got there early, and we drove through downtown, and we looked and took pictures, and there's hotels and banks and courthouses and
old looking.
Yeah. But then once you get out and you turn, you go down a couple of miles, and you turn on to Lombardi Avenue, and all of a sudden,
that's where it's at.
There it is.
Well,
and
now, I remember B.J. Coleman sharing a story. B.J. Coleman from McCallie that was actually drafted by the Green Bay Packers. He shared a story with me, and it has to do with when practice starts, about bicycles.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Tell that story.
That is the tradition. So there will be kids, and they will ride up to where the Packers come out of their locker room before they're going to the practice field. And the kids, and this has been a tradition going back decades, the kids will give their bikes to a player. Or hope that the player will take their bike, and they will actually carry the player's helmets. They will carry maybe their pads, and the player will ride the bike all the way down the field. Matter of fact, they showed one thing. This little girl, she was probably about 3 or 4 years old. I can't remember the player, and she had this little tiny pink bicycle. This big football player who no way he could have ridden this thing, but he didn't want to disappoint her, so he picked out her. And he picked up the bike with one hand and took her hand with the other, and they walked
to the field.
They walked down to the field, and they got pictures of it and stuff. Yeah, they've got some artwork. They've got old bicycles. That's a huge part of the Green Bay tradition. A huge part of it. And
now we know.
They've got their Hall of Fame up there, which you don't have to take the tour to do the Hall of Fame thing, but the Hall of Fame, you can spend a couple hours just in that. it was so well worth the trip.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to do it. And then we also got to go to Comerica Park in Detroit. And if you've never been to a ball game up there, wow. Wow.
Compared to that stadium, yeah, he did go.
It's
Compare that to
unbelievable.
What Truist is like now. What are their similarities? What are their major differences?
There's a lot of, so when you walk into Comerica, as you're approaching, they've got stone carvings of tigers. They've got columns. They've got tiger heads all around the outside with baseballs in their mouths. I mean, it's just these ornate designs, and it's awesome. You walk in, you make a turn to the left, and they've got a whole section right there that's got a carousel. It's got a Ferris wheel. It's got
cool.
a whole ring area where there's 8 or 9 different cuisines. You can eat just about anything you want, from tacos to conies to barbecue to sushi to shawarma.
And it sits in downtown.
Yeah.
Area.
Yeah. It sits in downtown area, and they've got all the stuff now from the different decades. We saw Ty Cobb's bat, and we saw Al Kaline's jersey, and they've got all the stuff, kind of like Monument Park.
Trammell and Whitaker.
At New York.
At Truist, they have Monument, or wherever they call it.
Where they've got some of the former...
The Battery.
Yeah. But they've got it in one section. The Tigers kind of have it spread out everywhere. And then you get to the outfield, and they have statues, that people have carved. It's of Kaline, and it's of...
that stadium, I
Cobb,
think, is in the neighborhood of 20 years, probably.
Probably, yeah.
Is it... Would you put that up against most of the stadiums in out there, as far as its quality?
Of the stadiums that I've personally been in, I've got it number 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you didn't see...
Now, I haven't been in a ton of them. I've been in about 7 or 8, but that's the most fun I've had.
They came out with a polling the other day, maybe a few weeks ago, and it was listing what they thought was the best stadiums, 1 through the bottom. You know who number 1 was? Pittsburgh. And I've seen that. And
I could see that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Atlanta's
stadium.
new Truist
Pittsburgh
fell
is
somewhere
gorgeous.
around
Team's terrible.
10 maybe. But
Truist is a beautiful stadium.
That stadium was one.
I've always loved, just from the looks of what you see on television.
And I've seen it in person. It will surprise the whole town of Pittsburgh. Will surprise you if you got this bad image of it.
Oh no,
it's
great. Not that image.
I've always thought that
great.
Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City was a beautiful stadium. That waterfall and stuff out there.
It's got a lot of age on it.
Oh yeah, that's one of the older stadiums in Major League Baseball. I think that
we had great seats because Andra's mom went with us, and she's getting a little older now, so we got the section that's got the railing and the chairs right there on the edge. And we actually got on the Jumbotron briefly. I didn't catch it till the last second. Andra
I watched that game when you were there, but no, I didn't see that.
It was way before the game. But that was the first Sunday night game the Tigers had in 7 or 8 years.
Best record in baseball now.
And Tarek Skubal, good night. He struck out 13 in a one hitter over 7 innings.
That was an ESPN game.
Yes.
What is really impressive, and you touched on it a little bit.
They love their baseball in Detroit.
And you talked about this even a little bit with going to see when you went to Lambeau. One of the things that I've enjoyed seeing happen over the last 10 to 15 years is how many of these major league franchises in all sports have realized what there is to be made in celebrating the history of your franchise. Opening up that stadium to a tour to let people go in. And, when we went to Boston, we didn't have time to do it, but there's a tour of the Garden. You can go up there and tour. They have their historical areas where they brought all the stuff over from the original Garden.
Yeah.
All the banners hanging, all the things that you can do to market your franchise. It's nice to see that a lot of these teams finally have embraced that of, look, we may suck right now, but we've not always been that way.
No,
let's
more
celebrate
are
what
doing
we've
that
done.
here in the last 20 years. Because I remember we did a tour of Camden Yards 2009, 2010, something like that. And the stadium it was probably about 15, 16 years old at the time. And that was an incredible tour. That's guy,
a beautiful stadium.
That guy took us on a 2-hour tour. So it's to last an hour. He took us on a 2-hour tour. But yeah, Detroit, God, they
underrated
love
underrated
baseball.
sports city.
I don't think it's an underrated sports city. I mean,
Well, the people in the South probably don't have it ranked right up there. With
and here's the
great.
cool part, because literally right next to Comerica Park is Ford Field.
Mm-hmm.
Right next, we were actually going to tour Ford, but they didn't have any tours going
And then
on.
what's
that day.
the?
And then the hockey arena, the new Little Caesars arena, is literally like 2 blocks up the road.
The new Joe.
Yeah.
How about the Palace?
We passed through Auburn Hills, and I didn't realize.
Oh, was the
Auburn,
hockey arena and the hockey and basketball not in the same arena?
Yeah, it is.
I was gonna say,
but
yeah.
it's like 2 blocks down the road, so
Oh,
it's all
okay.
right there together. Auburn Hills is actually like 20 miles outside of the city, and that city wasn't even a city until 1983. So they built that city, they built that arena, and the Pistons moved there. But
Now I don't know how much you
they
saw. I don't know what you saw.
they love their sports
town wise, but Detroit's had a bad rap on it for a long time about its decline as a city goes, and its appearance. But now, from a standpoint of a sporting event, that they don't go hand in hand.
Well, I love Detroit.
You did.
I absolutely love Detroit.
Most people say the opposite, Scott.
No, I really enjoyed it. We went and we did Greenfield Village and the Henry Ford. With the
Oh yeah, you sent me some really cool pictures.
yeah,
and
some of the
from
stuff.
in there.
I mean, I can't even start to describe the things in there. But like we did the Motown Museum,
Yeah.
which was
Paisley Park.
unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, there's parts of it that are run down and old in the city,
And there
you
is in
can say
every other
that.
city in America.
But there's a lot of stuff that's springing up brand new all over Detroit. The people were super nice.
So you see some recent growth.
Oh yeah, you can see it right away. It
Well,
was really
let's
something.
not forget that
Same way with Minneapolis too.
Let's not forget that a lot of times the crap that we hear on television is nothing more than it's exactly that. It's crap. It's designed to get people riled up about, you don't want to go there. Because if you listen to the network news sometimes, they would have you believe that California is some kind of wasteland that nobody wants to go out and visit.
Well, there's a lot of folks that live there, ain't
And
you?
I love California. I mean, I've been 4 times to California. I've been north to south. I've never been to a single section that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
I've been there 3 times, and I didn't see anything bad either. But I was in the spots that I shouldn't have seen anything.
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, now, don't get me wrong. It's just like anywhere else. Are there places that you don't need to be? Of course there is. But that's every other city in America. I mean, good Lord, we can say that about Rossville, Ringgold, Fort Oglethorpe. There's areas that you don't go to
Now,
at
I
certain
will
times
I
of
will
day.
say
careful now.
that last year we were gonna go, and we did go to Portland just briefly. Because we wanted to see the world's smallest park, and we wanted to go to Voodoo Donuts, but it was
Keep
one of those
Portland
stops.
weird, baby.
It was one of those stops where we only had like an hour in Portland because we had to be somewhere else. But we had actually heard from some of our other stops. We heard people talking. It's like, don't go to Portland. Don't go to Portland. And that wasn't on the news. That was people just, random people we saw at Lighthouse. And we heard people, you don't want to go to Portland. My son lives there. He said, stay out of Portland. And we're like, oh, okay. Well, if the locals are saying don't come
That's
to Portland.
different.
Now, I'm sure it's probably not as bad
Right.
as what they were saying. And I kind of wish we had more time to kind of explore, the city and stuff
It's
like
a racket. They just don't want you there.
that. Maybe not. But we didn't see anything horrible. Now, granted, we were only there for, like an hour and a half tops. But
That always makes me laugh about, and it doesn't matter where we go or what we do. There's always those people that'll be like, I wouldn't, well, if I was you, I wouldn't go down there, and I wouldn't. And my response is always the same thing. You know what? I can step off of a sidewalk tomorrow morning to get ran over by a bus, and I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to enjoy the things I can enjoy and see the things I can see. And if I've traveled there and I've got a few minutes, by golly, I'm going to go check it out.
some of the best restaurants are down there.
I was going to say, this one right here is the example of.
We went to Buddy's Pizza, and it's
Yeah.
not in the most affluent districts of Detroit. It's downtown, it's gritty and stuff, and it was so good.
Well, I found you a restaurant this past weekend in Jekyll Island, just outside of Brunswick. There is a seafood joint that's right up your alley.
Ooh.
It's way the hell out in the middle of nowhere at the end of a set of piers where they've got a bunch of fishing boats.
There you go.
It was recommended to me by Mike and Carrie Johnson with the tagline of, this is Herbst's kind of place. And it is literally a little bar called Mudcat Charlie's. And the seafood is made, I mean, it's probably right out the water.
Yeah.
and thrown on the grill.
Reach out the window, grab it, and
and
put it back in.
it was absolute. I got a big old platter with fish and crab legs
Can't
and
beat
every.
good seafood.
Oh,
my
I'm
favorite.
telling man, the only place that I've ever had to this day that is better is there is this little restaurant, and I never can remember the name of it. If my aunt were here, she could rattle it off immediately. But if you go down to River Street in Savannah, in one of the little side streets down that way, there's this restaurant that has a little inlet. You go in this restaurant, and it's so fancy that the tables are made out of 4x4s and plywood with a hole in the middle of them and a garbage can under that hole. And they bring you out a piece of newspaper as a placemat, and they bring you out crab legs and stuff that probably haven't been out of the water more than a few hours.
They made some business decisions. What can we do without?
Yeah. What I mean, we will take care of you on the food. The ambiance is not going to be much.
There you go. If you put your money into the food, which is why I'm there,
Yes.
then I don't care what your decor looks like. I don't care if
As
all your
long
plates
as it's-
are matching. If you haven't changed the boots
As
out
long
in
as it's clean.
60 years. Yeah.
As long as it's clean, I don't care. The food is why I'm there, and I've been to some places before that I've looked around and been like, huh. And then dinner comes out, and it's like, oh my God. This is...
Yeah. And just the flip side, I have been to restaurants where we sat down and everything was immaculate and the food came out and I'm like,
And it was garbage.
And disappoint you.
Well,
we went to a restaurant in the Bahamas one time at Atlantis, a celebrity chef's restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he was probably not there cooking it.
No.
But I know I paid $50-something for a grouper dinner, and it was dry as a bone.
Yeah, no.
And I'm like, I could cook this
Yeah.
100 times better at the house.
Yeah.
That's disappointing when you buy into paying for a lot and then it don't meet that expectation.
And you build up.
Well,
this is gonna be this great, and then it
that little place the other day, I paid $36 for a seafood feast, and honestly, after having it, I'd have paid double. That's how good it was.
We found a couple little
You should have asked them
places.
to be a sponsor since you just gave
Sure,
them so much.
yeah, come on.
We found
Come
a
on in
couple
here.
little places in Michigan. We had to stop because everything was going to close, and it was like the last night, and we went in there, and it's nothing but locals. And
They're
man,
rolling
it was-
sidewalks in.
Last
so
few
good.
minutes here. 7:07 started. They ended. I imagine they're fixing to start
Start up
back.
again. Yep.
Okay, so this is the last push into
I
the,
think we
to
got
the real stuff.
I think we got one that's coming up. If I'm not mistaken, Ringo on the 19th is supposed to have 4 or 5 Georgia teams and 3 or 4 from Tennessee.
That's
too.
one you talked about before.
Yeah.
They,
and
they
I'm
haven't
sure
had another.
I'm sure there's more, but that's off the
Okay.
top of my head.
So the point we're making is football's approaching us. And
3 weeks from tomorrow is the first scrimmages in Georgia.
Okay, and we need to start saddling up some coaches to come in here and talk about their programs and tell us what we don't know. So that next showtime, Rusty, I don't know when it is, but
Maybe next Thursday we'll
let's
find
try to
somebody
find
between
somebody.
now and then. We'll find somebody to get in here and talk
Yeah,
to
let's
us
try to find
because
somebody.
we got to get cranking as the season starts. So we'll definitely get the push. Well, folks, appreciate you coming on with us today, and it's always fun when we get it kind of rambling like this. We talk about a little bit of it, everything, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed bringing it
Scott's
to
vacation,
you. Exactly,
as much as I did.
as much as we did.
And I didn't even mention Paisley Park.
Yeah.
No, he didn't
just
do
briefly,
that.
if
No.
you're a fan of Prince, it's
yeah.
a little pricey.
That's like Mecca for music
But let
fans.
me tell you about this real quick. They are so protective of it up there.
Oh, I bet.
So they not only told us turn your phones completely off, power your phones completely off. They gave us like these pouches
To put them in.
that you had to put them in, lock them, and they had one of those security things like on clothes, and we could not open them, or they had to open them for us. The only time we were allowed to take pictures, we could take them in the gift shop, and we could take them like outside. But once the tour began, we could not take video pictures of it. Well, you're not supposed to video at all, but still pictures you could not take until they brought us to the NPG soundstage, and they had some memorabilia back there. They had concerts playing on the screen. They had his blue Bentley. They had some of his microphones, guitars, and everything. But they had to open the phone cases for you. and that's when you could take the picture. But
I wish more places were like that.
I was the last one out because they said last one out of the recording studio. Make sure the door's shut. So I made sure everybody was gone, and then I walked right in the middle and stood there for like 2 seconds because another tour group was coming in. I'm like, I'm gonna be the last one. You know the guitar he played during the While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
That guitar is on display right there.
Oh wow!
In the middle, he played it at the Super Bowl. He's played it in Purple Rain.
Is that the yellow one?
It's got the animal print type of thing on it.
Yeah.
I was like, I am that close to that guitar.
Oh yeah.
And he had recorded so much stuff in that room, and I was just.
How much
how
much did it cost? You mentioned it was pricey.
$75
per person.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
But it was like almost a 2-hour tour.
I was gonna say that's not.
But it wasn't that bad. But man, if you're a fan, geez, go up there and go. It was.
Okay. Well, more about Scott's vacation next week.
We'll see you guys next week. Take it easy.
See ya.